Moms of Reddit, what do you know about your child that you'll never tell them? Story 1. I was turning my daughter's mattress when I came across a notebook full of female nudes. She must have been putting it together for some time. Not wanting to embarrass her or violate her trust, I finished flipping the mattress and put the notebook back just as I'd found it. But of course, that was years ago and she still has no idea. Story 2. I saw my flip cam was missing from the table. I put it on and went to look for it in my 11-year-old son's room. I checked to see if there was anything recorded, and there was. He was masturbating to a magazine of mine advertising women's clothing and underwear, and commenting about which girl he'd like to put his penis in. I put the camera back, and when he came home, I asked him to bring it downstairs if he had it. That gave him enough time to delete the videos. And he has no idea I'm now hiding my flip cam and ladies' clothing magazines. He'll never know I saw his tiny boner manipulated to images of plus-sized women. Story 3. My 3-year-old is a very affectionate little guy, but he's very embarrassed about his being affectionate. He thinks I don't know, so he comes into my room every morning for snuggles and then sneaks out when I wake up. Story 4. I caught my son once pretending to milk himself into a bucket while taking a bath. He was only around 4 years old, so I don't think he remembers, but he was hovering over a bucket and squeezing his penis. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me he was pretending his penis was a nutter and was trying to get milk. So I said, okay, honey, and slowly closed the door. The end. Story 5. I went for a walk once with my daughter when she was about a year old. It was along a cement paved path that went through this little scenic park area. Lots of suburban nature and shit. I had brought the stroller along, but she was getting a bit antsy, so I took her out and sat her on the handle, facing me. And I held onto her waist and used her bum and my forearms to push the stroller. As we walked, this section of pavement in front of us ended up being covered in crickets. I don't know why there were so many. I had never known this trail to have crazy amounts of crickets midday. So I anxiously start pushing them through with the stroller, hoping that if I move slowly, they'll have time to hop out of the way. They mostly hopped away, but one jumped right up into my daughter's face. I panicked, and I straight up smacked her in a split-second reaction. The cricket jumped off her face again before I got to it, but she looked at me stunned and started crying. And then I cried because I felt horrible, but I couldn't stop laughing because of how stupid the whole thing was. I got lots of weird looks as I laughed the rest of the short walk home. She'll never know. Story 6. I'll never tell my daughter that I accidentally threw her across the room onto a wooden floor when she was 1 week old. It was about 2 a.m. I was breastfeeding her in the living room, and a giant spider crawled on my arm. The whole new baby/late at night thing made me stupid, so my reaction was to use the arm I was holding the baby in to get the spider off my other arm. My little girl went flying. It wasn't enjoyable. She was fine, however, completely unharmed, just kind of pissed off. Story 7. We had an awesome cat named Chosen One. We all loved this cat, especially my oldest son, who was beginning to drive, about 17 or so. One day, my son was leaving the house to go somewhere, and when he left, he reached down, gave Chosen One a little love, and went out of the door. Unbeknownst to him, the cat had followed him out the door, and for some reason, the cat must have run under the car. Nobody witnessed this event, so we're speculating on what exactly happened. So my son drives off, and a little while later, I go outside only to find Chosen lying on the driveway, curled up in a ball, dead. We think the kitty ran under the car or was in front of the tire or something, and when my son drove away, he ran over Chosen One and killed him. We were all pretty upset. Of course, and when my son came home, we told him Chosen had been hit by a car on the road and died. We've never told him, and never will, that we're pretty sure he was the one that killed the cat. He'd blame himself and forever feel guilty about killing his favorite cat. Story 8. When my first wife was 4 months pregnant and diagnosed with stage 3-4 breast cancer at 18 weeks, the doctor gave her a few choices. Her best chance of survival was to abort the baby and have aggressive chemo. We talked about it, and she decided to try and carry out our son to term. They delivered our son healthy about 6 weeks early. She died about 5 months after his birth. I have since remarried, and he is now almost 18. I don't plan on telling him that she saved him at her expense. It was a tough time, and I don't blame him, and I never have. Story 9. When my biological dad beat her with a broomstick when she was pregnant with me, he was super pissed because he found out I was a girl and he didn't need another bitch in his life. I'm glad my mom told me about him and his abuse because I don't feel the need to look for a relationship with him as I get older. Though he eventually ended up killing himself and leaving behind his new family. Kind of shitty. Story 10. My 13-year-old son is very timid when approaching awkward subjects. I've raised him as a single mother, so he doesn't have a father figure. He has started to grow some facial hair, but it's being shaved. Except he doesn't have a razor, and it only seems to get shaved when I'm not home. So one day, I leave one of my razors out to see if it changes position. And little do you know, it does. I'll buy him an electric razor as soon as my financial situation permits, but I don't think I will confront him about this. Story 11. When I was around 5, my aunt walked into my room while I had the nozzle of a bicycle pump on the tip of my penis. I was trying to pump air inside me to see if I would swell up like a balloon. I didn't know this until my mother told me about it a few years ago when we chatted about funny things that happened in the past. Luckily, we don't live close to a bridge because I seriously thought about jumping. How could she believe this would be funny to me? I was mortified. Story 12. I found this beer stash in our basement fridge when I was 16. Miller High Life, I think. I drank some and thought it was utterly disgusting. Not like acquired taste terrible, but rather, what the fuck? How do people drink this? My stomach is literally on fire. Hid the bottles to throw away at a later date. I crossed beer off my list of things I liked. Forget about said beer bottles. One day I remember and go look for them where I had hid them. Instead, a note. Valchrist, those beers were at least 8 years old. We removed them from Grandma's fridge when we were cleaning her house. I won't tell your dad. I hope your first beer was memorable. Mom. Story 13. When my son was about 10 months, there was a cricket on the floor by our patio door. This giant cricket was the king of all the neighborhood crickets, and it just fought a valiant fight against invading cricket pirates because he was missing a couple of legs. So, I'm holding the baby thinking, okay, brave cricket, you have a go because I'm not trying to hear your braggart songs in the middle of the night. So I put my son down and unlocked the patio door, only to look around in confusion because the cricket king had disappeared. It turns out my son had no sympathy for the king, his valiant fight, or his loyal subjects, because just one thin cricket leg snaked its way out of my kid's tightly clamped maw. The best part was that as I tried to dig out that bug back out my kid's mouth, he struggled mightily, refusing to open up and ate every last bite. TLDR, my kid is the man. He knows his protein. He spares no king. Story 14. When I was a kid, I was diagnosed as dyslexic. They told my mom so that she could help organize extra classes and stuff for me. My mom was cool with that as long as no one told me what they were for. She didn't want me to use the excuse of being dyslexic. When I got to a university and was training to be a tutor, I was told the early warning signs of dyslexia. Later, I was chatting to my mom about my day and mentioned that I thought it was odd that I had so many warning signs. Then she casually said, "Oh, your teachers told me you had dyslexia when you were 5. I didn't tell you. You would have used it as an excuse." Thanks, Mom, I think.